a lot to talk about, but first up, obviously, is the current crisis, which is the continued assault on our institutions, our history, our police, the rule of law, our Constitution, our country, our economy by the violent left. They are being aided and abetted by the media that is covering up for their misconduct, promoting their radical agenda. They are aided and abetted by allied politicians, mostly on the left, but also on the right, meaning there are Republicans also providing cover to them. We are facing an insurrection. We, as I pointed out, almost lost Washington, D.C. last week, but for the intervention of our military and proactive leadership by President Trump and his colleagues at the White House and in the administration. We have violence continuing throughout the country, lawlessness. We have in Seattle what I'm calling Antifa-stan, where you've had these radical leftists, these Antifa types, take over a part of Seattle with the support and protection of the governor there and the mayor there. We have statues of Christopher Columbus being torn down or defaced, other statues being torn down, defaced, being dumped into the river. It's like something out of the East Bloc to see this communist attack on our country and our history. And rather than focus on this insurrection and our threat to our republic, what are the politicians here in Washington, D.C. doing? They're focused on what? Attacking the police, making their jobs harder, coming up with federal regulations to track what they're doing, as if that's the problem. You have major corporations attacking the police. There's news this week or today that Microsoft and Amazon aren't going to sell facial recognition technology to the police, not because they object on civil libertarian grounds to the police using facial recognition technology. It's because they've put their lot in with the anti-police left that's trying to destroy and defund the police. I mean, they don't want to defund the police, by the way. They want to erase the police. You see this in Seattle. The bill that Nancy Pelosi is promoting, they passed some police reform bill. It's an anti-police bill that shovels money to their left-wing allies. Like, it's specifically named in the bill. I encourage you to go look up Nancy Pelosi's police reform bill that is going to be voted on soon. And you can look up the names. They talk about the role of La Raza, whose very name is racist, the race, the ACLU, other radical left groups, and giving them a specific role in accrediting police departments. They want to turn over your policing to the leftists who are trying to destroy the police right now. And I'm sure if you've seen online or on TV the videos of the Minneapolis officials who are talking about it's privileged if you feel like you can call the police safely. You know what? These people are so anti-public safety. It's outrageous. Because they're trying to scare the people who need the police the most, those in economically disadvantaged communities, minority communities, because crime disproportionately affects them. Minorities are disproportionately victimized by violent crime. Look it up. And they're telling them, you don't call the police. Last week I highlighted they were telling people don't vote because you might die if you vote. They don't believe in the rights of any Americans. This is a power grab that is designed to replace institutions either completely or replace their leadership with people that advance their political and ideological agenda. The public safety, they don't give a whit about. They don't care a whit about. And I see Republicans in the Senate, they're thinking of ways to restrict and regulate the police. You know, I'm not one of these who say, oh, well, the Republican bill, I'm going to sign up to it. No, 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 no. There's an old saying in Washington, D.C., you have the stupid party and the evil party. And sometimes evil legislation gets passed, and sometimes stupid legislation gets passed, and sometimes legislation that's stupid and evil gets passed, and that's called bipartisanship. So that's what I fear is happening here. The police are going to now be answerable to the deep staters who have been trying to destroy President Trump. That's exactly what will be happening here. So the Justice Department and the FBI and all those other agencies who abuse the civil rights of Donald Trump and other innocent Americans based on their political beliefs and for other purposes to protect their own from being prosecuted, like Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden, they're going to be running the police departments effectively under these reforms. Even the Republican reforms harass the police departments. Our police do thankless, dangerous, harrowing jobs. In a professional manner almost all the time. It doesn't mean there's no abuse. Of course, that's absurd to say that. They're government agencies. Of course, there's abuse. They're the most closely watched, monitored government agencies in our nation, practically speaking. Imagine if you had a body cam on during your work hours every day. How do you think you'd come off? Would you even bother going to work knowing you'd have a bureaucrat in Washington, D.C. potentially watching everything you did? And our nation's institutions are failing the police. They're failing the citizenry. The president, per usual, his instincts are right on these rule of law issues, but he's surrounded by people who are embarrassed to enforce the rule of law. I know there's been this debate about the Insurrection Act, which has been used repeatedly by presidents. It goes back to the year 1807. 1807. And essentially, it means if a government, a state or local government, loses control of its territory, can't guarantee the security and safety and rights of U.S. citizens in their territory or state, the president can send the military in or do what's necessary to protect our country, the safety of our citizens. That's the first thing government's supposed to do. Make sure you don't get killed by people. Now, do they need to implement the Insurrection Act in Seattle to get back control of this territory from the Antifa-stan warlords now? I don't know, but it certainly ought to be on the table. And the military ought to be supporting the president's discussion of that. They ought not to be leaking and dissing, as I said, through General Mattis, the president's lawful authority under our Constitution and our system of laws. I mean, we talk about the deep state. Virtually every general over there in the Pentagon is Obama certified. He should be cleaning house at the Pentagon, as far as I'm concerned. And General Milley, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, apologizing for going over with the president after his military helped take back the square from the violent insurrectionists. And he apologizes. It's terrible. Absolutely terrible. The violent left is going to push everywhere there is weakness. There is weakness in Seattle. They're pushing there. Where you see these statues being pulled down, that is a result of political decisions not to protect public and private property. They're bidding on our prior generations with whom we would be nothing. And now all of a sudden it's racist to have army bases or military bases named after Confederate era generals and military leaders. But it wasn't racist yesterday. It wasn't racist when Barack Obama was president. It wasn't racist when Bill Clinton was president. It wasn't racist when Speaker Pelosi was speaker for the years she's been speaker. And if you think they're, quote, concerned about the Confederacy, that's a load of bull. They hate America. They see the Confederacy and are naming military bases and installations after Civil War era generals, which was done as part of the reconciliation process after the Civil War, which they want to tear apart. Do you think it's just limited to the, quote, Confederacy? No. They believe our Constitution is as corrupt as the Confederacy. They want to tear apart the Constitution. The left is trying to tear down and wants to tear down statues of Washington and Jefferson, our founding fathers. This is an attack on our republic. It's an attack on our republic. I support the police. I stand against the rule of law. I stand, with the rule of law. So I want you to be skeptical of this police reform movement. It's harassment. It's absolute harassment. May God bless those police officers that are able to do the work despite the coordinated hatred. I mean, you see they're now, the left is now trying to take away, there's a show on a children's program called Paw Patrol that depicts police in a positive fashion. They want to tear down and take away any cultural depiction that's positive of police work. How is that not an assault on the rule of law? And they smear the police as being racist. There's no systemic racism in our nation's police departments. Let me say it again. There's no systemic racism in our nation's police departments. There's no systemic racism in America. Oh, wait, there might be. Where might that be? Oh, maybe in college admissions programs that take race into account when they provide benefits and admissions. Oh, but that's within the law. Well, it's race-based decision making. It's racial. That's systemic racism, which is the left engaging in it. And they say they were concerned about the Confederacy and the Civil War. Are you kidding me? Judicial Watch was in court. We had to go to the Supreme Court to stop an election in Hawaii that was limited by race. It wouldn't have let, quote, non-Hawaiians vote on an issue related to the sovereignty of Hawaii. It was a secessionist movement led by radical leftists who wanted to take Hawaii and make it an independent nation or kingdom separate from the United States. And the way they were going to do that was by keeping, quote, non-Hawaiians away from the franchise. And the Supreme Court prevented that state election from going forward only because of Judicial Watch's litigation. We fought the left to preserve the Union, quite literally, in Hawaii. You know, and obviously the politics of it are quite obvious. I'm repeating myself, but obviously the politics are quite apparent. This is an election year, so a lot of this abuse, a lot of this attack on the rule of law is for political purposes, which makes it even more egregious. Is it worth destroying the country in order to get into the Oval Office? Is it worth destroying the country in order to retain or get more power in Congress or in various states or whatever? If I were the president, I would send federal authorities. I don't think he needs to send the military in at this point to open up that Seattle space. I'm thinking the U.S. Marshal Service or other competent federal law enforcement. He doesn't have a choice. I don't think he has a choice. I'd say invoke the Insurrection Act, but these Obama generals, who knows what they're going to do? They're part of the coup cabal. It's pretty clear. Do I mean literally they want to remove the president from office? No. Do I suspect they will refuse a lawful order? Yes. You know, maybe there's a way. Attorney General Barr is a pretty smooth cat. Maybe there's a way he can persuade cooler heads to prevail in Washington to clear that area to allow the rule of law to be reasserted in that insurrectionist conclave. We'll see. Something's got to be done. And now, of course, you know, a lot of the violent aspects of the protests have passed. So what are we hearing now? Oh, coronavirus is back. I mean, if it's not one thing, it's another in terms of suppressing the populace. In our big cities, you're told you can't leave for fear of coronavirus based on junk science. And then we had rioters in the street and they were told you can't leave for fear that, well, that was actually true because the police refused, well, at the direction of their political leadership, were unable to enforce the rule of law. You know, the president was subject to a coup attack, an impeachment attack. They tried to burn down the White House, kill him a week ago. And now they're coming after all of us by taking away our property, taking away our safety, taking away our police protection. It's not going to stop with the end of the Trump presidency, whether that be next year or 4 years from now. The left has decided now that it can use violence or the threat of violence to achieve political results. They've always had that. They've long been doing that. We have corporations supporting them. As I said, Amazon and Microsoft refusing to provide police technology. They're now literally funding one of the most extreme political organizations in the country, Black Lives Matter. I mean, we can argue over the slogan, whether it's appropriate or not. There's no arguing over the organization is a radical left organization. It's a radical left organization. And we see the left defaming America time and time again. We're not systematic racism. There is no systemic racism. Smearing the police, slandering the police. There were dozens of people shot in Chicago, mostly black. I think all of them were black in Chicago. Police had nothing to do with that. So as our black population is, I said, disproportionately victimized by crime, the thin blue line that protects them the leftist purporting to act on the behalf of those Black populations is trying to decimate one of the few government services that saves lives in those communities. I mean, the craziness is now there. You see leftist cities, quote, breaking contracts or ending contracts with local police departments to provide security for children in the schools. I thought we wanted to protect our children. Now we don't. They're going to place children at risk to make a political point against the rule of law and the police. And then the destruction of our nation's history. I mean, we stand on the shoulders of past generations, and the left is spitting on them. The great destroyer, the left. That's one of the things I want you to focus on. The left, and I don't mean all leftists, obviously, but you know that. The left is the great destroyer. It is the great destroyer. They're taking the Taliban approach to history. The Taliban approach to history. Been warning you our republic's under attack, and you've been seeing it quite explicitly these last few weeks.